They said the war would change me, and it did, along with the way I see the world. But it wasn't the gunfire, the bodies, or the smell of gunpowder that did it. It was time. The time that passed since I last saw my brother. And the silence. That took the place of a goodbye. Aaron vanished when we still had time to fix things, when we could still apologize, fight again, and laugh about it afterward. He was the kind of person who faced the world with clenched fists and an open heart. I was the opposite, always trying to hold everything together. When he disappeared, they said he was just another rebellious kid, that he'd run away, that he'd come back. But he never did. Not for Christmas, not for our father's funeral, not when our mother got sick. The police opened and closed a report. I opened a wound of guilt I never closed. I enlisted in the army a week after he went. Missing. They said it was an escape. Maybe it was, but I escaped forward. Into discipline, routine, and the noises that kept me from thinking. Deep down, I thought one day I'd find his name on a list, a paper, a photo, anything. But nothing came. Just missions, just the uniform, just repetition. Until today. Today, as the military plane cuts through the sky with that constant vibration only those who've flown 1,000 times recognize, I feel a different weight in my chest. It's not the armor. It's memory. I remember one night, before everything, us sitting on the roof of the house, tossing pebbles into the gutter, talking about the future. He said the world was a lie and that one day he'd disappear. I laughed. He didn't. That stuck with me. And now, out of nowhere, it's like everything's coming back. As if this flight is a return. But I still don't know to where. The landing was like all the others. Dry, direct, no room for poetry. We disembarked in silence, with trained eyes and calculated steps, each of us carrying not just weapons, but our own ghosts. Mine walked beside me like a shadow. His name was Aaron. His face was plastered on the walls of my mind, etched in every dusty window I passed, in every hooded man I saw in the distance. That was new. In previous missions, I was ice, cold, methodical, efficient. Now a moment of distraction was enough, and there he was, with that same stubborn teenage smile, the one that said, "I'm doing it my way, and you'll have to deal with it." But I never did. When he started questioning everything, school, government, church, our own father, I thought it was just a phase. I kept wearing the moral uniform of obedience, trying to hold the house together while he kicked at the pillars. We fought hard that last night. He called me a coward, said I was just another cog in the machine. I yelled back that he was ungrateful, a burden, a disappointment. He stormed out, slamming the door, and vanished. Until today, that scene replays like a cursed film. I wonder if I pushed him away, if that fight was the final shovel of dirt over, the chance to bring him back. And now, years later, I'm back in a place where there's no forgiveness, only orders. The commander briefs us, map, entry points, expected enemy behavior, all technical, but something in the photos catches my eye. A face. It's not clear, but there's something there. The shape of the jaw, the nose. My stomach tightens. I shake my head. My teammates carry on as if it's just another operation. But I'm no longer there. I'm back in our childhood home, hearing Aaron sing off-key in the kitchen, saying the world was too dirty to live clean. And now, if my gut is right, he's here, somewhere in this conflict zone, breathing the same air as me, and maybe holding a weapon aimed at me. The mission began at dusk. The sky was no longer blue or orange. It was grey, like the border between right and wrong I was starting to cross inside. We advanced in silence, with studied steps, each covering their sector, every breath held as if breathing too loudly were a threat. The dense vegetation hid more than enemies. It hid the questions I tried to smother since seeing that image. And the closer we got to the target, the stronger the feeling that something wasn't right. It wasn't fear, it was a kind of instinctive recognition, as if my body knew before my mind. We entered the hot zone. We were in formation when I heard the first crack, then another. Gunfire. The radios erupted with commands. We took position. I raised my weapon as always, aimed as always, but then I saw. He was about 30 meters away in the shadows, partially covered by a dirty scarf. His posture was different, tenser, older, but his eyes, God, his eyes were the same. The same eyes from when we broke the living room window and blamed the dog. The same eyes when he challenged me at dinner and smiled like he'd never get caught. My knees nearly gave out. I ducked behind a rock and took my eyes off the scope. My ears buzzed, my heart beat out of rhythm. He was there, my brother. The blood I cried for, cursed, tried to forget. Alive. On the other side, holding a weapon, part of the group we came to dismantle. For a second, the whole world stopped. My teammates fired, shouted, but I heard nothing but my own breathing and that childhood memory where he said we'd meet again somewhere no one expected. I thought it was cheap teenage poetry, but he kept his word. And now I had my finger on the trigger, and so did he. Time froze, a second of hesitation, a second that could kill me or save us both. But war doesn't wait. It drags everything with it, even the choices we never wanted to make. After that frozen second, everything turned to chaos. I don't know if he recognized me too, but something in the way he averted his gaze, the way he hesitated as he retreated, told me he did. There was no shot between us. Not yet, but the rest of the team didn't know what I knew. Bullets crossed the air, shouts broke through the radios, and smoke began to replace reason. I kept firing, but not at him. I aimed high where no one was. I tried to seem present, but my mind was miles away, trying to reorder everything I thought was true. When we returned to the command post, no one noticed anything. No one saw my silence. No one saw that my chest was broken inside. For the first time in years, I didn't know what to do. My training always taught me that the enemy was someone who made choices, who picked up a weapon knowing what it meant. But Aaron, my brother, the kid who made paper airplanes and left notes in my school backpack, the boy who cried in secret when he heard our parents fighting, how could he be there? How did he become part of that? The questions began piling up inside me like rubble in a building about to collapse. The commander gave a brief report on the operation. 2 bodies were recovered from the enemy group. Others fled into the jungle. No one seemed interested in the details. But I was, because I knew that if he escaped, he was still nearby. And, worse, that at any moment we could cross paths again. I should have reported it, I should have informed them. But how do you do that? How do you say, I recognized an enemy, when that enemy has your last name, your voice, your blood? That night, alone in the barracks, I sat on the edge of the bed with my disassembled weapon on my lap, like an ancient ritual of control. But my hands trembled, and for the first time in a long time, I cried. Not for the deaths, not for the mission, but for everything I'd buried before getting there. And that now, without warning, was clawing its way back to the surface. I started searching, without looking like I was searching, not out of fear of being reprimanded, but because I still didn't know what I'd do if I actually found him again. During patrols, I'd glance beyond the obvious horizon. In every covered face, I looked for familiar features. In every remote village, I listened to murmured conversations, trying to catch accents, inflections, anything that might betray Aaron's presence. But what haunted me most weren't the signs of the present, they were the fragments of the past. Memories came like soft explosions, one after another, detonating certainties I swore were unshakable. I remembered the day he stormed into the basement with a notebook full of clippings and ideals. He talked about corrupt governments, hidden truths, how the military was just another cog in a broken system. I laughed, thinking it was just teenage rebellion. But he wasn't joking. He saw flaws where I saw structure. He saw oppression where I saw order. We fought hard, and I, in my blind pride, slammed the door on the conversation. Now I realized that might have been his last cry for help. In the present, a piece of information reached me almost by chance. One of the local informants mentioned a foreign man who used to broker deals between the rebels and medical supplies. A man who spoke fluent English, but with a contained anger in his tone. He said the man seemed like he didn't belong to that world, but also no longer accepted the one he'd left. I asked more, pretended it was strategic interest. The informant described the man as tall, thin, sunken eyes, a small scar on his eyebrow. My stomach turned. The scar was old. He got it when he fell from the backyard tree trying to impress a girl from school. I carried him in my arms that night and promised I'd always take care of him. Now who would take care of me? I stayed silent for days. My performance slipped. My teammates noticed the change, but no one dared ask. The commander called me for a routine talk, suspicious. He said I needed focus, that this was one of the most delicate missions yet. I nodded, but inside I was no longer on the same side, because my heart was torn between the uniform I wore with honor and the possibility that my brother, even if wrong, was still searching for a truth. What if he wasn't just hiding? What if he was trying to prove something? What if, in some twisted way, Aaron was trying to stay true to the same thing that brought me here, to protect? I returned home with fewer visible wounds than in other missions, but carrying an internal wreckage no bandage could fix. The silence of the return was deafening. No medals, no ceremonies, just papers, reports, bureaucratic questions, trying to measure with words what couldn't fit even in the body. I was called for a routine review. Actually, a disguised inspection. Someone noticed my irregular performance in the final days. Someone noticed the distant look, the hesitation in the logs. And of course, it wouldn't take long for someone to want to know what I saw or what I didn't say. But I stayed silent. I didn't mention the reunion. I didn't mention the flash drive. I kept it all to myself because I still didn't know what it meant. I spent nights locked in my apartment, listening to the ticking of the clock with that small device in my palm like an emotional detonator. When I finally mustered the courage to plug it into the computer, my fingers were sweating. I opened the files, videos, scanned documents, names, operations, contracts. I didn't understand everything, but I understood enough. The content was explosive. There were proofs of deals between American representatives and rebel leaders, covert operations, manipulations of territory and narratives. Aaron wasn't just a fugitive. He was trying to bring down a lie far bigger than I'd imagined, and at the same time, he was still my brother. Still the kid who wanted to fix the world with his own hands, even if he broke everything in the process. I felt anger that he hadn't trusted me before, that he let me carry years of guilt, but I also felt shame, for maybe having served blindly something that wasn't as clean as I believed. For the first time, everything blurred. Patriotism, truth, blood, loyalty. And the worst part was knowing that no matter what decision I made next, someone would feel betrayed. The next morning, I was called to High Command. A special debriefing, they called it. I walked into that room knowing everything could change. That maybe, when I left, I wouldn't be a soldier anymore. But I also knew this story wasn't just mine. It was ours, mine and Aaron's. And as messy as it all was, he gave me a choice. Now it was my turn to honor that. The debriefing began like so many others, formal, technical, cloaked in that cold tone of someone trained to demand explanations without seeming accusatory. They talked about the operation, the rebels' movements, how I'd react if I'd encountered something out of the ordinary. I answered with calculated phrases, trying to seem honest yet opaque. But inside, I felt the truth like a restless animal clawing at my ribs. When I left that room, there was no more room for neutrality. I had to decide. Either hand over the flash drive and throw Aaron to the wolves, or keep it all buried and carry the weight alone until the end. I didn't have to choose. 2 days later, he found me. He knocked on my door like someone who'd been dreaming of that moment for years. He was even thinner, aged, but his eyes, the same. Those eyes he always had when he said, "Trust me," and did the exact opposite. We stood in silence for almost a minute. We didn't know how to start. There was no rehearsal for that reunion. He got straight to the point, said he knew what was on the flash drive, that he hoped I'd seen it, that he didn't want to involve me. But he had no choice. And more than that, he said I was the only one he still trusted. When he said that, my throat tightened. Because in that moment, as contradictory as it was, I understood. He vanished, yes, but not because he wanted to. Push me away. He vanished because he knew that if I'd known, I'd have gone after him. I'd have thrown myself in the middle, and maybe I'd have died for something that couldn't be won with weapons. I messed up a lot, he said, his voice hoarse, but not in keeping this from you, not until now. We talked for hours, about the covert operations, about the leaders who played with lives like chess pieces, about how he tried to return to a normal life and was hunted, how he had to infiltrate, and how now everything was about to explode, with or without my help. He gave me a choice, again. Either you turn it in and maybe save a lot of people, or you protect the uniform that's protected you all this time. But you can't do both. And I sat there facing him, my brother, my enemy, my reflection, trying to understand when right and wrong became just different shades of sacrifice. The next morning, I rose before the sun. I put on the uniform one last time with the ceremonial slowness of someone burying something sacred. I looked at my reflection, in the mirror, not searching for strength, but trying to recognize the man still there beneath all the layers of loyalty, discipline, and obedience. For the first time in years, I felt I was no longer afraid, because the fear that paralyzed me wasn't of war, but of betraying a version of myself that no longer made sense. I walked into the command headquarters with the flash drive in my jacket's inner pocket. I went straight to the intelligence sector and requested a meeting with the counterintelligence officer. I said I had something to declare. They thought it was another late report. It wasn't. When I placed the device on the table and said, "There are truths here that need to be seen by everyone, including you," the silence in the room was heavy as lead. No words, just wary glances and tense fingers over confidential folders. Within 24 hours, I was temporarily suspended, interrogated, monitored. The flash drive's contents spread through closed corridors and eventually open channels. An official investigation began. Big names were exposed, shady contracts broken. The dust of truth settled in places where before there was only concrete and secrecy. Some called me a traitor, others a hero. Neither label fit. I was just a man who finally chose not to stay silent. And Aaron, he vanished again, but this time not as an escape, as protection. The last thing I got from him was an envelope with a handwritten note. "This time, I trusted you." Inside was an old photo of us, still boys, sitting on the roof of our house, looking at the sky like everything was still possible. I cried for hours. Today, I no longer wear the uniform. I walk as a civilian, but I carry scars only veterans understand. I started a small foundation for former soldiers who, like me, came back with more questions than medals. I share part of my story with those who want to hear it. But the other part, the one involving my brother, the war within, and the choice to tell the truth even when it hurts, that I keep in silence. A silence that now no longer screams, because it has finally found peace. Years have passed since the day I chose the truth. The world moved on, as it always does, but inside me something changed forever. I don't expect everyone to understand what I did. I don't seek forgiveness for exposing what others preferred to keep hidden. I only hope that somewhere, My brother is living in peace, because in the end, he wasn't just a man against the system. He was a living reminder that even the most broken bonds can be rediscovered. If there's enough courage to listen, to step back and to love. And me, I keep walking, not with weapons, but with his memory, and the certainty that sometimes the real war is deciding who you refuse to lose.